Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really excited about our latest IPA Digital Town Hall event, where we get to share with you, the members of the IPA, our latest research. And in this case, we've got some very interesting upcoming research that we can reveal to you today exclusively before we put it out into the public domain. And that research is on our analysis of what we call peak woke. And we do come bearing good news that we have broken the back of woke. And so Bree is going to talk to you about her latest research in that area. And I am joined tonight by our Director of Research, Morgan Begg, who is the engine room of the IPA's research work, and research analyst and fellow Bree McKee, who also heads up our Generation Liberty. So really good to be with Morgan and Bree. Great to be with you all. Looking forward to our chat tonight. Now, we'll just let you know that we've got a lot of questions. We've probably got about 70 questions that have been sent through. So thank you very much for all the questions that have been sent through. We'll get through as many of those as we can. Also, there is a button on your screen, Q&A button that you can click on and submit a question that will be received by us. No one else can see your question. So if you want to send it through, please do that throughout the course of the conversation. In order of what we're going to talk about tonight, we will discuss Bree's work. And firstly, I will give a bit of an overview of what the IPA has been up to and the situation facing Australia at the moment. That'll be followed by Morgan, who will give you an update on our latest research and what we've got coming up. And then Bree will go through her research on peak woke, followed by a conversation with Morgan, Bree, and myself, as I say, taking your questions on that matter. So, look, the first thing I would just say is thank you as members of the IPA for your support of the work that we do. Nothing we do is possible without you and your support of our research. So it's greatly appreciated. We had a lot of good feedback from the chat we had with myself, Adam Crichton, and Robert Bryce on the topic of net zero. And you will have seen that over recent weeks, there's been very good and positive developments on the issue of net zero. Those of you who have been following our work or listening to the latest podcast I have with John Roscombe called The Mainstream will have seen the developments of net zero with Barnaby Joyce putting in his private members bill into Parliament to repeal all of the elements of net zero. And we were working with Barnaby and his office on that issue. And myself and my colleague Saxon were up in Canberra on the Monday and Tuesday where that was entered into Parliament. So very important developments there. As we've said before, net zero will be dumped by the coalition this year. I don't believe the 12-month review is a real thing. I think it's just a holding pattern. I think they're going to dump it this year, and we're finally going to have that important issue contested. So we are making important ground on that matter, though I do accept that there is a very long way to go there. And so in terms of the topic at hand tonight, well, what I really like about this research and why I wanted to share it with you now first is because we hear a lot about woke ideology. We hear a lot about examples of wokeism, whether it's activists tearing down statues, whether it's the never-ending gender identity, fluidity issues, and so forth. But what we've done in this research, what Bree and Morgan have done, is unique in the Australian context, which is they have put an empirical foundation around wokeism and have adapted international methodologies to actually demonstrate the prevalence of various woke terms in the Australian lexicon. So I'm very excited about that. And that is one of the things that the IPA does that no one else does, is we've got the capacity to take some of these cultural issues and put some hard data around it in order to make sure that it has some impact on debate. So I'm very excited about what Bree is going to share with us this evening. What Bree's research highlights to me that you'll hear about in a minute is basically a couple of things. The first is that our political system is dysregulated in the sense that it's very sick. The political class does not represent the mainstream of our society in any meaningful way anymore. And there's a larger growing gap between regular Australians and those in the political establishment. And look, the bad news is this is getting worse, and it's going to get worse for a few years before it gets better, and it will get better, and we'll talk about why it will get better. But for the time being, it's going to get a bit worse. And look, we can see that on the major issues that we face, whether it's mass migration, which is dividing our society, sending our economy backwards and distorting our political system. Australians want a reduction, if not a pause to migration, whereas the political class want an increase to it for various reasons, which we'll probably get into. The policy of net zero, which I've discussed. We hear that net zero is popular, but if net zero is so popular, well, then why don't Australians want to pay for it? Research that Bree will remind you of shows that almost half of Australians have said they don't want to pay 1 cent for net zero. And I think, 98% or 97% refuse to pay anything more than $500 per year. So if we're told that net zero is so popular, then presumably over half would be very happy to pay $500 a year. But they're not. Only 2% are. So not even the Greens want to pay for it. Not that I'm suggesting that Greens are hypocrites or anything, but but these things are not popular with the mainstream. And the other point is around our values. And this is something I get very passionate about, as you know. I love Australia. I love our flag. I love our national day because we're the greatest nation on earth. And as I said on ABC Radio, of all places, in Melbourne yesterday, that Australia is not perfect, but we are without peer. We are the greatest nation on earth, and that's why Australians support our flag and our values and our national day. But the political class does not. It is simple that there are many within the political establishment and the activist class who hate Australia, and they hate mainstream Australian values, and things like net zero or mass migration or wokeism are vehicles for them to tear down the Australian way of life. So, these are all very important matters. You will have seen the developments in relation to Palestine and having Hamas praise our Prime Minister for that move, which is a development that I didn't think we'd ever see, certainly in my lifetime. But the reality is that decision was driven not by mainstream Australian concerns, but by narrow sectional interests, which currently dominate this government. And it has to be said, a very small minority in certain sections of our community are dominating the direction of this government, which is a very bad government. And in essence, I think the key point here is that as we look at these issues, the mainstream of society doesn't support them, the political class does. But as we'll talk about, we are making some very important ground. So I just wanted to end on a couple of points here. So what is the role of the IPA in all of this? Well, there are three key roles. The first is that we fight. And we fight through our research, through our analysis, and through the communication of that to the public and to policymakers, and to educate the public about the big issues facing our nation's future. Of course, there are ebbs and flows, as there has been in our 80-plus year history, but our key role is to keep fighting and to keep up the debate. The second thing is that we say what needs to be said. We were the first organisation in the country to oppose lockdowns. We were the first organisation in the country to oppose net zero. We were the first organisation in the country to point out that Australians believe we should be all equal, and therefore the voice to Parliament would be inconsistent with the Australian way of life. And we were the first organisation in the post-COVID era to point out the eye-watering numbers of mass migration coming into our country. And we're all very supportive of migrants who have come here, and every migrant that comes to Australia is a vote of confidence in us as a country, but it has to be managed better, and we need to have values compatibility of our migration program and a sensible number intake, which just isn't happening at the moment, and it is dividing us deeply. And the third point is, we keep the flame alive by creating a contest. One of our key roles is to make sure that the public knows that there is a different opinion out there, and that it's okay for them to have that opinion. I can remember when we first came out against net zero, basically on the day that Scott Morrison signed up to it. And a lot of people said, you've just got to go along with it. You've just got to accept it. Just like they said about the carbon tax. And we said, no, we're not going along with it. It's wrong. It's illiberal. It's going to destroy our country. And we were right. We were right on every one of those points. And I'm sad to say we were right, because I wish we were wrong, but we were right. And now we're seeing the fruits of that, 5 years of work paying off. So look, with that, I just wanted to say again, thank you very much for your support. Looking forward to our chat tonight. Please do make use of the Q&A button and send through your questions, including, where you may disagree with things we may have said, or, we like to have a bit of we're not the ABC. We're very happy to have a debate. We're not the ABC, we're the IPA. and we're very happy to have a debate. So with that, I'll hand over to our esteemed Research Director, Morgan Begg, to give you an overview of what's happening at the IPA.
Oh, well, thank you, Dan, and good evening, IPA members who are tuning in tonight. As the IPA's Director of Research, I'm delighted to be with you as we launch this important research because it speaks to so many of the public policy challenges that Australians are facing and that the IPA is working on. Since 1943, the mission of the IPA has been to further the individual, social, political and economic freedom of the Australian people and to maintain and enhance the Australian way of life. But our freedoms and the values underpinning the Australian way of life are under threat on a range of fronts. And to highlight some of the work we have been working on, you might have seen the insipid response from political and civic leaders to the image of protesters for the Palestinian cause burning the Australian flag earlier this month, burning this nation's flag over a conflict and cause on the other side of the world. Next month, the IPA will be launching a monograph exploring the proud history of the Australian flag, its importance as a unifying national symbol, and why it is so wrong to give some people different flags on the basis of their identity. In Victoria, the state government has committed to finalising a treaty between the government and Indigenous groups by the end of this financial year. This will permanently divide Australians by their race in this state. The IPA has recently published analysis showing that the state government has already spent $700 million over the past decade just talking about and negotiating a treaty, which is separate to the material concessions and claims in the form of economic redress and compensation that any treaty will entail. And we're also seeing in New South Wales is in the middle of a process to expand its state anti-vilification laws to make more speech unlawful and to promote the idea of substantive equality, which is an attempt to solve discrimination with more discrimination if the right groups are targeted. The IPA will be engaging in this process. All these issues are separate public policy challenges, but they share the same foundations. And this is the idea that people are fundamentally different because of their race, their gender, or other identity characteristic, and that they should be treated differently under the law. This is effectively the abolition of equality before the law, a hard-fought legal principle which traces back centuries to the Magna Carta, and which has been with Australia since settlement. The IPA will always support the great Australian value of equality before the law, which is why I'm so delighted to launch this research with Brianna McKee, IPA Research Fellow, and to share the good news showing that these divisive ideologies are on the decline. Thank you, Bri.
Well, it's so great to be here with you all, and thank you so much for your support, which allows us to conduct research like the report I'll be presenting on tonight. Today, I'm going to talk about woke ideology and how we at the IPA believe it has peaked in terms of cultural popularity, and as a result is now in decline. As we all know, we are in the middle of an ideological battle. And at the IPA, we develop the ideas and the research to wage war on the economic front, on the cultural front, the education front, the human rights front, and the list goes on. And what we're up against, all of these different areas, are united by one key thing, and that's woke ideology or social justice ideas. So, what is woke ideology? The Oxford Dictionary euphemistically defines wokeness as being acutely aware of or attentive to alleged social and political inequities, particularly those relating to social and racial justice. A clearer definition of wokeness is that any disparate outcomes in society are not because of chance or a lack of effort or merit, but the result of Western societal structures that inherently preference people who are white or male. It's therefore impossible or much harder for those who do not fit into these categories to succeed materially in life. So that's a basic definition of wokeness, but it doesn't stop there. As woke advocates like Laura Roy and Candace Smith explain, being woke implies not only a recognition of these structural biases, but a commitment to actively addressing them. So as the book Stay Woke says, knowledge is a necessary but not a sufficient component of being anti-racist. You have to put your knowledge to use in order to eradicate the problems of racial injustice. So, how are people putting this to use? Well, you see it in education. Prep students are taught to rap about climate change before learning the alphabet, and uni students are gluing themselves to the streets in climate protests. You also see it in English and literature curriculums, with books chosen based on the gender and race of the author rather than the content. You see it in culture, with statues of old white men being torn down right across the world. You see it in big business, with the corporate world obsessed with DEI and ESG initiatives. And you also see it in politics, with the Liberal Party, for example, looking at introducing gender quotas at the moment. So as you can see in this slide, woke ideology advocates for a very narrow view of the world, and it teaches people to see everything through the prism of class, race, and gender. And finally, it results in the creation of legal rights or benefits based on identity. So peak woke refers to the point at which woke ideas reach their most extreme and illogical conclusions, and this then triggers a shift in the zeitgeist and a backlash. So some signs of this would be the election of Donald Trump. Then in Australia, there was the overwhelming rejection of the voice to Parliament in 2023. And if you look at continental Europe and the UK, you see the rise of populist, anti-establishment parties. So all these things indicate a mainstream rejection of wokeness. So to determine whether Australia has reached peak woke, we identified 20 words which have come into vogue to denote various aspects of this ideology. Words like white privilege, identity politics, and decolonisation, to name a few. We then used the Google Trends search engine to determine how often these terms had been searched on Google. Google has a 90% share of all internet searches in Australia. It's therefore a reliable indicator of the public consciousness. And Google Trends is widely used in public research, so it's a reputable source. How it works is that Google Trends collects search data for a term or phrase each month. It then assigns a numerical score representing relative search interest. So a value of 100 represents a period of peak search popularity. A value of 50 means that the search popularity is half as popular as when it was at its peak. And a value of 0 means there was not enough data. So using Google Trends, we've dated peak woke to March 2023, as you can see on this slide. This was when the highest average frequency of the 20 woke terms was recorded. And the popularity of these words has been declining since that time. As you can see here, the moving average helps identify longer-term trends. And I'm now going to take you through a few of the charts for the individual words, and we'll start with identity politics. So identity politics is the process and the result of crafting political special interest groups out of identity groups such as race, gender, and sexuality. And as you can see, it peaked in April 2021, and it's trended down since. The next term is Invasion Day, which refers to attempts to reframe the anniversary of British settlement in Australia on the 26th of January, 1788 as an invasion and a day of mourning. We can see the peaks coincide with January 26, and we still have a problem, but the peaks are getting lower. So this term, it peaked in January 2021, but since then, its trajectory has been broadly downwards. And what is interesting here is that this actually lines up with our Australia Day polling. So in 2023, 62% of Australians agreed Australia Day should be celebrated on January 26. And this increased to 63% in 2024. And in 2025, we were up to 69%. So these two pieces of research, they support each other, and our surveys provide a second evidence base that Invasion Day is losing support, which is great news. The next search term is the patriarchy, and this refers to the underlying societal structures and norms that allegedly benefit men. And the chart shows that this peaked in September 2020 and it's fallen since. So feminists will often argue that the system is rigged to benefit men, and that's why we need to have gender quotas. But recently, the IPA did some polling on this issue. As you can see in this slide, 1,000 people were polled and asked whether decisions by companies to hire and promote employees should be according to merit rather than race or gender. And what we found is that 91% of people agreed with this, which is a North Korea level consensus. And this shows that Australians believe in equality and they believe in meritocracy, and they don't think we need to discriminate against men in order to achieve this. The next search term is the acronym TERF. So TERFs are trans exclusionary radical feminists, and they're feminists whose advocacy of women's rights are exclusive to biological women, which is radical, right? But it's become more controversial in recent years because of the trans movement, especially around topics like women's only spaces. As you can see, the chart peaked in June 2020 and it's been in decline for the last couple of years. Next, we have First Nations. Now, this was an interesting one because most charts showed that the popularity of woke terms were decreasing, but there were a couple of exceptions, and First Nations was one. So this makes sense in light of how state governments have taken it upon themselves to push through the treaty process, despite the defeat of the voice. Victoria's treaty process has cost the taxpayer only $700 million. That's over the past 10 years, according to some research by my colleague, Margaret Chambers. And it just proves how tone deaf governments can be on these issues. The IPA's survey on the voice, which was written by John Roscombe, showed the majority of Australians voted no because they believed the voice would be divisive. It also showed that those in support of the voice were those living in the inner cities, so our academics, our lawyers, our politicians. So the referendum highlighted the disconnect between these two groups, mainstream Australians and the elite political class. What this graph shows is that there is still work to be done. There are some social justice ideas that still hold significant sway and they have to be challenged. So even though public sentiment has changed, the institutions are captured by these woke ideas, and it's going to take some time for them to catch up with the cultural shift that's underway. Now to climate justice, which peaked all the way back in 2018. So climate justice is a term used to take a social justice approach to the issue of climate change. Australia has a negligible contribution to global emissions, and so cutting our emissions, it achieves nothing, but we are still told that we need to act. But because there's no hard evidence for this, they've turned it into a moral claim. If you look at the chart, you can see that roughly every 3 years it spikes, and we believe these relate to a significant event. So in 2020, it probably relates to Australia's adoption of net zero, and the 2023 spike could relate to Greta Thunberg's arrest in London. But it has been broadly on a downwards trajectory, which is good. ESG peaked later, but it's also on a downwards trajectory. ESG is the acronym that describes the investment principles which pressure companies to adopt environmental goals. This is also reflected in the IPA's yearly polling on net zero. We asked people a series of questions about Australia's energy policy. So the first question was, what should the main focus of the federal government's energy policy be? And as you can see, support for affordability has increased from 41% in 2022 to 56% in 2025. The poll found that just 1 in 5 Australians believe net zero should be the priority of our energy policy. Most Australians name affordability and reliability as their primary concerns. People were told renewables would push prices down, but their skyrocketing energy bills tell a different story, and Australians are realising that this is a problem. The second question, which I think is the most interesting, was how much would you personally be willing to pay each year for Australia to reduce its net emissions to zero by 2050? And the polling showed, as Dan said, that 98% of Australians would refuse to pay more than $500 a year to meet net zero targets, and 48% would refuse to pay a single cent. So, as soon as you ask Australians to pay for net zero, the support quickly dries up. But of course, we are paying for net zero. My colleague Adam Crichton found that we're spending $9 billion on net zero, which is the same amount we're spending on the Air Force. That's up from only 1.7 billion in 2022. If it was consolidated into a single program, it would be one of the 20 most expensive federal budget items. So, what does this research show us? It shows us that there's been a shift in the zeitgeist. There's a cultural correction that's underway. This reflects a belief that society functions best when it shares a belief in objective truth and shared values. Societies are shaped by ideas, and these ideas give meaning to existence. They define moral frameworks, and they guide public and private behaviour. They emerge, they evolve, and they're always at risk of being lost and replaced by alternative ideas. So the excesses of these woke ideologies are being revealed as both impractical and harmful. And as the pendulum swings back, the focus is shifting towards time-tested principles. The movement away from peak woke represents values that sustain individuals, families, and society at large. However, the problem is these woke values will continue to exist, at least in part because all the mainstream institutions, schools, universities, media, sporting codes, government, they're all run by ideologues who are committed to these values. So woke words and phrases that we used like First Nations, DEI, and decolonization, they're still on an upwards trajectory. So there's still a lot to be done in terms of challenging these narratives with good research. Moving past woke is going to require a commitment by our political leaders, but also the Australian people, to not only drive out this divisive view of the world, but to ensure those values are replaced by ones that are consistent with universal moral principles and that lay the foundations for social cohesion. So to conclude and summarise, there's been a shift in the narrative, the tide is turning, social justice ideas are falling out of favour, but while the cultural correction is underway, the work is far from over. At the IPA, we exist to ensure that this shift is not just a passing moment. So through our fresh research and our advocacy for ideas that are often quite old and have stood the test of time, we seek to shift the Overton window, challenge the capture of our institutions, and offer Australians a better vision for the future. But none of this would be possible without you. So we rely on the support of our members to enable us to do the research, the polling, and take these arguments into the public sphere. So on behalf of everyone at the IPA, thank you so much for your support, your commitment, and your belief in our mission. And thank you for attending this event tonight.
All right, thanks, Bree. Thank you, Morgan, for that. Very interesting stuff. So we'll get into some questions. We've got questions flooding in here from the Q&A button. So thank you very much for putting in your questions there. Look, just a couple of things while I remember. So I know a lot of you watch Paul Murray. Just a reminder that if you're going to watch Paul Murray tonight, our colleague Mia Schlichter's on there. So tune in to Paul Murray. I think he's on at 9 o'clock. So check out Mia on Paul Murray tonight. I'll also just say a big thanks to Mitch and Luan, who are in the studio and making all this work, and to Nina and Ashley for setting up this event and making it all run nice and smoothly. So I know a lot of you are, maybe you're giving the kids a bath, or you're having dinner, or you're out going for a walk, or whatever it might be. So please do stay tuned because we're going to get into a good chat right now with some great questions that have come through. So I am going to start with a couple of great questions right here. So how about we start with this one here, which is about, where do we have it here? About wokeism in decline. So there's a couple of questions here. I'll pick one that Martin Keast, who's asked us a question here. Bree, I'll put this to you first. How confident are you, Bree, that wokeism will disappear?
Well, I think the important thing here, Dan, is that it's on a downward trajectory. Wokeness is trending down. So as I said before, these ideas are still out there. Some things like decolonization, First Nations, Indigenous issues, ESG in big business, they're on an upwards trajectory. So we have challenges a battle that we need to continue to face and fight with good research and ideas. But some ideas are on the decline, and that's really good news.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think we've identified these ideas are declining. And for me, the challenge is what comes next. I think we've seen in the past that some woke ideas can be rebadged and given a new name, and they'll reappear. And for me, the challenge is what are we replacing woke with? And there's a danger that we sort of lose woke, and then there's just the void that they'll fill again.
It's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah,
it's one, another one comes up.
Exactly
This
right.
is one of the things we sort of struggle with, isn't it? Because we love Australia. We think it's a great country, but our enemies don't like it. So we're saying, no, this is good.
Yes.
Let's keep what we have. And they're always trying to destroy it in various ways. You can go back to bank nationalisation where they try to take over the economy.
Yeah.
And so our job is to kind of remind people about why Australia is a great country, why we love it, but then also to actually critique our opponents. So some people will say, well, we're being negative about things, but really we're doing it from a place of love, which is we love what we have. And we want to stop these terrible people destroying our country.
Yeah, so in somewhat, for these people, it can be very exciting to be a revolutionary, and they have this ideology that just it goes across everything. It's a society-wide prescription.
Yeah, Bolsheviks.
Yeah, and we're dealing with its manifestation in all these policy challenges, but it's really the same challenge in many respects. And it's like you said, it's reinforcing that this is about saving Australia. There is something in Australia that is worth preserving.
Yeah. Bree, you're a big Trump fan, aren't you? We had a big Trump DeSantis sort of factional debate in the IPA office. Meatball Ron, as they used to call him. I don't know how Meatball Ron came about, but anyway, we've got a couple of Trump-related questions here. So the best one here, I think, is from, I don't know if it's McKee or Mikey Wilson, who's also just sent one in as well on the chat. So I might get two from Mikey here. So what happened to the momentum gained when Trump was elected? Well, I think it's still there, isn't it? Or has it tapered off a bit? I mean, he sort of put the kibosh on DEI, I think.
Yeah,
I think he's sort of...
I agree. I think, I mean, that period from sort of January, February, March, that was very high energy out of the Trump administration. And you saw from day one, he was signing executive orders and setting the agenda on dismantling wokeness in the US federal government, and it was very exciting. And all the cuts to US aid and all the woke programs, it was very exciting.
Yeah,
I think it's all still happening. I think there's a lot of good things that are still happening out of the United States and out of the Trump administration. But it is hard to keep that accelerator at 100.
Yeah. Just get rid of Jerome Powell from the Fed. We'll be there. What do you reckon, Bree? I mean, you follow American politics pretty closely. I mean, what's your assessment of Trump and woke?
Well, I think in America, you see this cultural correction so much more clearly. And what they did in America is the Trump administration, his supporters, MAGA supporters, institutions like the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation, in the years leading up to this last presidential election, they cultivated a counter-elite. And so when Trump got into government, he had all these people who were able to staff his administration and play supporting roles in influential institutions. So we at the IPA need to do that. And that is part of what the Generation Liberty program does for our young people. It's to cultivate a counter-elite, because actually you don't need that many people on board in order to affect great change. And this is a point that Morgan made before, but with Trump, what he's done is he's stopped funding a lot of these woke institutions and centres. And
I want to get to that, because, hold that thought, because we've had a couple of questions on that about how do we de-wokeify the universities.
Yes.
So what's Trump done?
Well, Trump has cut funding. A lot of these woke ideas are supported by government funding. There's no private sector support for them because they're woke, and as you know, go woke, go broke. And so what Trump has shown by cutting the funding is that as soon as you stop supporting these ideas, they can no longer exist because they rely upon taxpayers' dollars in order to continue.
And I think the example is even more relevant for Australia, because so much of university revenue, and in particular the funding for research that happens in universities, comes from the federal government. It's well documented now that you really can't get a research proposal approved by the Research Council unless it fits within these narrow ideological boxes that you're pursuing. And academics, they've sort of become educated towards that, and so it's self-reinforcing. And it's what Trump shows is it's money, and you turn the money off, and then behaviour changes.
Yeah, that's it. All right, well, I've got a funny one here. So if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. Robert Stuckley, my question is, why are we the only life on Earth to have more than two sexes? I think, don't tadpoles kind of morph?
I was thinking
that might
the
be
same. Yeah,
that might be the only other one.
I think it's Australians, humans, and tadpoles.
Tadpoles.
And then there's the rest of
there's every other mammal from what 15 billion years of evolution or whatever.
Yeah.
So, do you have any comments on that? Or leave that one if you want.
I think it's
I
self-evident.
thought there were 72 genders, but anyway.
Yeah.
No, very good. Okay, let's get into this one here. So, actually, I'll go to a couple of the live ones that have just come through right now. It's a very dynamic environment. Thanks for sending through your questions.
I can see them just rolling.
They're rolling in here, so keep sending them through. Okay, Janine, so this one for you, Bree. Is there a bias as to how we gain research data? So have you rigged this? How badly have you rigged it to get the result that you want? Or what have you... Yeah, just explain what you...
Yeah, so the process was that Morgan and I looked at the woke words that are used at the moment, and we identified the ones that are most relevant and in use. And we used Google Trends in order to track the popularity of the Google searches. So how much is this in the public consciousness? So we haven't rigged the data. We've chosen these words. They were based on words in the woke dictionary. Which is an online dictionary.
Well, it's and just to reinforce that point, which is, and you mentioned in your slides that there are a few of these terms which are still somewhat popular. And if we were rigging it, we could have taken those out. But
that is true.
We've dealt with it very even and comprehensively.
Isn't it the case though? And there's sort of a couple of questions coming through about the data, which is, well, could it just be the case that people have become kind of acclimated to this terminology, or so they don't need to look it up? Because is it the case that Google is like, you're looking things up, so if people just accept it, if everybody agrees that we're whatever woke term, and then people don't look it up anymore, is that really?
I'm not sure. I mean, there may be some cases on the margins, but I think things like if people are talking about climate justice, for instance, like they're going to be searching it, and they're going to be looking into it, and there'll be government programs that are associated with climate justice. It will still be in the public consciousness, and the words will still be in society's lexicon. So, yeah.
I think if it's been accepted by society, they're even more likely to use it, to sort of search it in relation to whatever government program they're sort of looking at, or things like that, because it'll just be in the language.
Let me know what you're up to. Let us know if you're out for a run or what you're doing right now. If you're sitting at home having a nice meal, maybe a nice Australian grass-fed steak or something like that. I always like to eat 2 steaks to offset the vegans who don't eat any. So let us know what you're up to now as you're watching this, and that'll be really interesting. So, look, let's go to this great question from Henry, which I really like. And I'm going to go to Morgan first on this one, because you've done analysis of this in the UK context with the seats one and the proportion of people voting and things like that. I don't know if you've done it in the Australian context, but we can elaborate. So
sure.
Henry asked this very good question. How can woke be declining when Labor won such a significant majority in the House and they are able to dominate the Senate with the Greens?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is some of the perverse outcomes that sometimes comes from our political system, which is when you have the distribution of preferences, you find that a party that only receives 32 or 34% of the vote, such as Labor has in the last 2 elections, can nonetheless hoover up through compulsory preferential voting a sizable majority. And so they don't actually have a popular mandate, but the political system, in a sort of aberrational kind of way, has given them one. And it was even worse in the UK, as you said, and I did look at the numbers in this, because they don't have compulsory voting. The Labor Party, which received 34% of the votes, it was only about 20% of the actual registered voters.
That was the lowest ever, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the lowest in decades.
It's another example of how the political system doesn't reflect broader society.
Yeah, exactly. So, because you have so many people opting out, and they're not actually participating. And so the actual remaining electorate, this was especially the case in the UK, which it's actually becoming much more of a niche and sectional electorate.
Yes.
And I think, this is really why a party like Reform in the UK is going to strike back and probably form the next government at current trends, because the way that the Labor government there is acting as if they have this wide popular majority of support, but they actually don't. They have incredible minority support of the community.
Yeah, all right.
And then I would just add to that Labor won because the Liberals didn't offer an alternate non-woke vision.
Correct.
And so Reform in the UK does that. And I think if we had a party that actually offered a non-woke alternative, then the voters would vote for them.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I think about this with letting 16-year-olds vote. Right, which is interesting in the UK because who are they going to vote for? Well, they're not going to vote Labor. They're not going to vote Tories. The young men are going to vote Farage, and the young women are going to vote Greens or Lib Dem. So it's going to probably cement the decline of the major parties.
That's true.
Now, Graham is watching from Scotland. Hi, Graham. I'm not going to do a Scottish accent, and I'm not wearing a kilt, but great to see you from Scotland. I don't know what time of day it is there, but maybe you're having a whiskey over there, but if you are, have one for us. So thank you for letting us know and tuning in all the way from Scotland. Have you been? I've not been to Scotland. Have you? The furthest north I've got was Manchester.
I've never been to that.
Far up.
No.
We'll put it on the to-do list.
Yeah.
Maybe obviously not in the winter time over there. Though.
No.
Now let's get on to a couple of other things. So Ashley asks, to what extent do you think the charts of different search terms are influenced by how language evolves over time? For example, decolonisation was unheard of a few years ago, but caught on recently. So what do you reckon?
I mean, yes, there's a whole list of words that have come into vogue that describe these woke ideologies. And a lot of the words that we've used in this particular analysis are words that were not really used a couple of decades ago at all. And so there is a language that is often attached to ideology, and there's a whole list of woke words which are attached to this particular worldview.
Do you want to weigh in? Or
yeah, no, that's fine.
Yep. Okay, so there's a really good one here. Colin Taggart. Hi, Colin. Colin, it's not a question, just a remark. Keep up the good work. Living in Wagga, the online option is great for me. Well, good to hear. We haven't made it to Wagga yet on our regional trips, but we will make sure that we get there. I want to ask a question that's sort of related to woke, but it's about immigration. A lot of people sending questions on immigration. Has Australia reduced its immigration intake? Morgan, has it? A little bit, but not much.
No, I mean it's a matter of marginal degrees. It's the current rate of the migration intake is still substantially higher than it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I think the annual average was about 200,000 per year net migration pre-COVID, and I think we're on track for 350,000.
Yeah. Wow. 350,000.
I think that's right.
1 year.
Yeah.
And that's on the back of what, 500,000?
Yeah, I think there were 2 consecutive years of 500,000.
500,
yeah,
and that's net.
So under the current government alone has been over 1.3 million.
Wow,
migration.
That's never happened before, has it?
Oh, heavens, no. This is by far and away it outstrips anything. It was more than the entirety of the Hawke government, which was in power for about 3 times longer. So as a matter of scale, to illustrate that.
Yeah. Well, Bob Hawke didn't hate Australia, so that's probably the key differences there. At least not openly. You live in Sydney.
I do.
The march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Yes.
Had a lot of flags.
It did.
Did you see any Australian flags?
There were no Australian flags there.
Interesting. What flags?
And I did hear a report.
Interesting.
I saw a video of Australian flag being burned.
Yes.
And there were reports of that. So.
Well, isn't it interesting that on that march, and this was the Palestinian march on Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, that should never have been allowed to happen because Sydney Harbour Bridge is an icon of Australia. It symbolises, everything about Australia to those overseas. But I found it interesting that there were no Australian flags there. And the reason there were no Australian flags is the people marching there don't like Australia.
Yeah, well, it seems it seems that they don't identify with Australia
At all.
whatsoever.
No.
And the question is like, why is this allowed to happen?
Got a couple of questions here about flag burning and what we think about burning the flag. Now, none of us like burning the Australian flag,
No.
but I'm going to bring this up because we've got different opinions on whether this should be criminalised or not. And it's very interesting. So we've got some research coming up that we'll be putting out on Australian attitudes towards burning the Australian flag. Spoiler alert, they don't like it. But in terms of criminalisation, so Phil Thompson, who's the member for Herbert, has I believe, a motion that he's going to be putting into Parliament in a couple of weeks to criminalise the burning of the flag. I think it's a good thing, and I support it. Morgan supports it in principle,
Yes.
but because Morgan is a very sensibly minded person, has some reservations.
I have reservations. I very much the sentiment I agree with. Let that not be confused at all.
Why did you go so soft?
I'm at the risk of being incredibly soft. I'm woke, dare I say? It is a challenging one for me, and I've got a considerable history at the IPA of arguing for things like freedom of speech and
expression. Yeah, fair points. Yep.
And it's also a question of, if you own a flag as a matter of property rights, should you be allowed to do what you want and dispose of it in a way that you feel appropriate? And the question of, even though it is completely and utterly odious to burn the Australian flag, odious, is it a matter of law? Is it a matter of police action to regulate things that are merely odious and not actually dangerous or harmful to other people? It's a difficult one.
Yep,
it is a difficult one. I understand this, but I understand the sentiment and the fact that this is an important and unifying national cultural symbol, and it needs to be protected.
Yes.
And I'm very much looking forward to the IPA's forthcoming research on the Australian flag and a monograph that will be coming out next month in time for Flag Day on the 3rd of September.
Yeah, good one.
Which is, the Australian flag is a great flag, not just because it's the national flag, but because it was the product of the community, and it has a long lineage. There was actually flags prior to Federation actually were very similar to what we ended up with. There seems to be this recurring theme of the design of the flag that recurs through the decades leading to Federation and was adopted at Federation. And generations of Australians have fought and died under that flag. And it's so important.
What do you mean it was a product of the community? It's very interesting.
Yeah, well, in 1901, the government ran an open public competition where 30,000 Australians, approximately 1% of the population, made submissions to this competition.
30,000, did you say?
Yeah, and
I thought it was like 300. 30,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people were really engaged.
Very much engaged, and of course, Federation was a big project of the time.
Yeah.
And the excitement for having a symbol, a federation, a flag for this federation, was very much a matter of great excitement to the Australian people, and the level of engagement was extraordinary. And it wasn't just one person who submitted this flag; it was countless who submitted similar designs, and there were 5 of those were declared equal winners.
How much do you remember? It was like 200 quid or something? They shared, or 250 quid?
Yeah, but they shared it. I think they shared it. Yeah. Very responsible use of taxpayer money.
What do you reckon? throw people who burned the flag in jail? What do you reckon? So it's Trevor, you were totally wrong, Morgan. If you burn it, go to jail.
I get it, Trevor. I understand.
What do you reckon?
It's not something I've given great thought to, but my instinct.
What's your gut instinct?
My first instinct is that it should be criminalised, especially in public places, and especially at protests.
Well, that's not a bad distinction. Public places versus in your own backyard, say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good point. Philip, this is a cracker. I have a nice grass-fed Angus Scotch fillet coming up to room temp and knocking back a delicious McLaren Vale Shiraz. Happy Eka. So Eka, so it must be coming out of Brisbane, I assume, if you're at Eka. So enjoy Eka. I'm also very jealous. Good that you're bringing up to room temp, because that's one thing I always do is look at YouTube videos of how to cook the best steak, and there's a big debate in the online community about, do you bring it up to room temperature, or do you just bring it out of the fridge and put it on? Do you season it before or not? Do you put olive oil on it or not?
Where do you stand?
So I bring it up to room temperature. I like to put it in a searing hot cast iron pan, with just a little bit of oil in the pan, and you absolutely sear it on either side. And then I like it to be very thick cut and very well seasoned. And then I put it into the oven for about 5 minutes. Right. So it's really crispy on the outside and just sort of cooks naturally. Its own juices in the oven. So that's my view. What about you? No, it's just instinct. I've sort of
okay.
I've put away so many steaks. I've just developed the instinct. How do you like it done? What's your favourite cut of beef?
I don't know, Dan. I always give it to my dad to cook, and it always tastes great. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's crack on. Henry, what do you think a Liberal vision for Australia should hold as its core policies in the 21st century regarding a non-woke alternative? Bree, what do you sort of alluded to some of that at the end of your chat.
So what's the question?
So what do you believe should be a non-woke alternative as we look to the future? So if we're not going to have wokeism, what should we have as a society?
I mean, as Morgan mentioned, you can't vacate this space. If you want to say that we want to get rid of woke, then you have to replace it with an alternate set of values. You can't just leave it as a vacuum, or these values will just stay, or they will return. So we need universal moral values. We need to reclaim the moral space. The woke left has taken that, and we need to take it back. And we need to replace it with something coherent and meaningful, and I think traditional. I think we need to return to past values which have worked and stood the test of time.
What do you reckon, Morgan?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, I do wonder how much of the current predicament we're in is actually the product of decades of a kind of values neutral approach.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's been adopted in the West. And this sort of, well, whatever happens, or anything goes. But because in the West, we haven't been confident enough to be forthright with what we believe and the values that make up a good life and good governance. It's essentially, I think, we vacated the field.
Yeah, it's
true.
Yep.
Yeah, good point.
Yep. Okay, well, we might take a couple more questions, then we'll wrap up for the night. So a few questions on education. I like this one from Lynn. It would appear from millennials down reading the classics is no longer a part of the English curriculum. What is the result? So, basically young people aren't reading the classics anymore. What is the result? Well, one of the results is that people listen to podcasts. That's actually where a lot of people get their information from these days. I know you're a big fan of Joe Rogan, aren't you, Bree? Or what's your go-to podcast?
I've listened to Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
I think one of the interesting things is looking at history, because history in universities is flailing at the moment. Like, departments are being closed down, courses are being shrunk, but podcasts, like The Rest is History, are hugely popular. So it is interesting how the podcast world is taking over from universities in some sense. And it's not that history is unpopular, but perhaps the way it's being taught, which is so woke and ideological and through the prism of class, race and gender, people are not studying it anymore, but they love history. And so they're turning to podcasts in order to learn it.
Well, one of the things I'd be interested in your thoughts, Bree, is it seems as if like the consumers of these podcasts, these long form podcasts, educational in their style, it tends to be males and young males. Like, why do you know? Like, why aren't young females consuming it? Is it? I don't know. I don't know if you have a view on that, but it seems like a very strange distinction that seems to have organically developed.
Yeah, I think men and women are different, and men tend to have more of an interest in things that are historical and political, and women tend to be more interested in lifestyle podcasts. And so there is a distinction in the terms of content that they will consume, and men are more drawn to certain things and women to others.
Do you think those lifestyle podcasts that appeal to women, are they, promoting woke ideas themselves, which is, I think we've noted before that there's a divergence among young people. I think young males are becoming, very anti-woke, whereas young women are somewhat, holding up wokeness. And
Yeah, that's
is that part of the phenomenon?
Yeah, in Generation Z, you see young men are ultra conservative and they're consuming conservative material and podcasts and social media, and women are becoming very progressive and they're consuming very progressive content. And that divergence is something that has happened in the last decade, and it's quite unique, and it's quite troubling because how are these people going to get together and form relationships and have families and kids if they are so polarized in terms of their views?
Yeah, big issue.
An even bigger issue is Brett says a gas barbecue is still the best way to cook a steak.
Oh, yeah,
That's a fair point.
That's a very fair point. Yeah.
Very fair point.
Yeah.
I'm not going to debate that.
Yep.
I reckon one more
We're
question.
very pro-gas.
Pro-gas. Yeah, we like gas. The only better way would be to cook it on a bed of coals.
Yeah.
Brown coal if possible. Okay, let's go for one more question here. Do you have any you wanted to bowl up, or do you want me to find the last one? I'll get one out.
Sorry.
Yeah, all right. I thought you were chomping at the bit for one there.
There's a few questions here about. We might have already addressed this. How to get it out of the public sector, how to get it out of the education. So it's you need political leadership.
Well, that's true.
Someone needs to step forward and actually take the action. And that's the thing that's the thing that really stands out about Trump is we used to believe that these problems in bureaucracies and in the government were intractable.
Yes.
And we've seen that. No, actually, you can just come in and do things.
Yeah, you can actually govern.
Yes.
Well, this is a point that's often made that the Liberals are often in government but rarely in power.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And it doesn't need to be that way. And that's a self-imposed constraint that I think they've put on themselves every time they've been elected. And but I think the lesson, no, just come in and just, you are the executive government. You can control these things. You can turn off funding. It's discretionary.
Yeah.
So just do it.
Yeah.
So,
and the bureaucracy is so problematic here because often they exist to support things like DEI and ESG, and they legitimize themselves by continuing to push these issues and sort of make new issues in order to grow and continue their existence. So getting rid of bureaucracy or like Trump has, by putting new people who actually support a different vision in those government positions.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we need to do.
Great. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Bree, I'll give you the last word. What's your sort of words of wisdom, takeaway? It's all on you now.
Okay. Well, I think our research shows that woke is in decline. So that is a great thing, and we should be happy about that. It's a good news story. We don't always get that. So it's a cause for celebration, but we have to remember that this is still an issue, a big issue, and we need to continue to fight the ideological battle in order to make sure that woke social justice ideas are replaced with good values.
We'll probably have to do a couple more, actually. A couple more questions just come through, sorry. So that won't be the last word. We'll do a couple more quick ones and then we'll sort of wrap it up. Sorry about that. I misread the time. So let's go to this question here, which is basically to do with the education system again, and what sort of multifaceted approach do we need to take to get wokeism out of the education system? So that would be obviously, as we've talked about, the funding and the political leadership. Is there any other component that we can sort of think of, or?
Well, I mean, the education system itself is multifaceted. I mean, you've got higher education, and it's a vastly overregulated and over-centralised institution in Australia. It's been said that in Australia we only have one university with 42 different campuses. So winding back regulations and allowing more and more diverse and more varied types of universities and higher education providers to come into existence to provide competition is very important. And then in terms of, well, it actually starts earlier, doesn't it, in the education space? It's primary and secondary school. It's the national curriculum, which provides the foundations for woke content and critical theories to be disseminated at an earlier age. And so we need that overhauled as well. We need to go back to the fundamentals of education. It's maths, it's literacy, it's the basics, and we need to go back. And the education results, the NAPLAN results, which show stagnating, if not declining, outcomes, reinforces that.
Isn't the answer just more funding though, Morgan?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry. Yes.
We did some research on
That's what the education unions tell us anyway.
Yeah.
But the IPA research shows that as funding has increased for schools, our results have declined. So the intersection there demonstrates very clearly that funding is not the issue.
The funding, so from state and federal governments, I think over the last decade, it went up 43%.
Yep.
But the results, what happened to the results? So funding went up by 43%.
Yeah. Well, sure. Well,
what happened?
You'd have to assume they went up by 43%. No, they declined by 5%.
I think it was 3.
Yeah, they actually went backwards.
So money went up by 43.
Yeah.
Outcomes went down by 3.
So that's a great return on investment.
Only government could achieve that.
Yes.
Yep.
Doug, it's so frustrating to watch the left continually seizing control of language to win public support. Should Conservatives do a better job at preemptively inventing equivalent vocabulary that opposes and exposes the hypocrisy of progressive ideas and policies? So I think the broader point here is about the use of language. Which we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we need to try and reclaim these words back. But I also agree with Doug in saying there's an argument that we should create our own language around the value system that we want. But I think we need to do both. And the left is excellent at naming things with words that make the organisation or the program sound great, like safe schools, respectful relationships. Who could disagree with that? Sounds great. But these things actually do the opposite to what they claim.
Yeah, they're not progressives, they're regressives. It's not renewable, it's, unreliable.
Unreliable, yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
energy.
I think it's a very important point. And I think this was showcased during the Voice referendum, where the no campaigners, the people that were opposed to the Voice, owned equality, owned the word equality, and this is a very valuable and highly reputed word, and that was very important. And I think just talking about woke in very direct and plain terms. I think phrases like get woke, go broke, sort of summarize and sort of in a very succinct way summarize wokeness in a way. It's like I think I won't say the words explicitly, but I think Donald Trump said everything woke turns to SHIT.
Yeah,
and it just sums it up. It's like these ideas are they dangerous, and things disintegrate when you use them.
Yeah, and they're memorable. People remember that.
Yep.
Well, here's what I like from Melissa. Do you think Australian media will fall apart due to woke like what has happened in America? I think it will, and I think it is.
The legacy media is already in decline.
Yes.
It's because of changes in technology and improvements.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be slightly different, or it may take longer in Australia because of there's a high level of concentration, especially on free-to-air television.
Yep.
There's only really 3 commercial
Yeah.
broadcasters. The government broadcasters will be safe because they're not subject to market forces. So, I definitely think print media's, that could be on the way out if they don't. If they keep pushing these ideas that no one's interested in.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people under 40, I learned this as a candidate, which is at the election, which is if you want to communicate with anyone under 40, you've got to do it online.
Yeah.
Social media, digital media, podcasts, that's really how information is consumed. And it's really interesting because it means it takes longer for ideas to reach people.
Yeah.
Because, if you go back in the day where you just had your 3 or 4 television stations, you'd have 3 or 4 radio stations in the city or the town that you lived, and you had 1 or 2 newspapers. Well, you could have a policy announcement, and it would reach 80% of people within 2 days. But now it takes you probably 6 months to reach people because you have to probably go on 12 or 15 different platforms to actually get to people.
Yep.
So
you can't just post it once. You have to post it every day.
Oh, yeah. You got to keep going. And the interesting thing is, there's a lot of downsides to how the current landscape is. But one of the positives is you have to work a lot harder as a political leader to be able to communicate to the public. So now Trump may have won with or without going on Joe Rogan's show. He probably would have won anyway. But I think he was on there for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, maybe 2.5 hours. Yeah,
I don't reckon that's ever happened before.
that's extraordinary.
JD Vance was on. It went on. So, but the point is, you can't just go on Fox News for 5 minutes and get your lines out. Like you actually have to talk to people about what you believe.
Yeah.
And we face a lot of challenges, but I reckon we'll get very good political leaders that will be forged out of this new system, because only the best will survive, and the ones who are no good will get shown up very quickly. So that's one of the positives.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we'll end it there on a positive note. So, Bree, thank you for your work. Very much appreciated. Looking forward to this coming out in the next day or two. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, and apologies about my opinions on the flag.
You didn't tell us your steak opinions.
Yeah. I'm usually just happy to eat.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much to all of you, and thank you for your questions and participation, and looking forward to our next town hall in the near future. So thank you very much, and have a lovely night.